What began as a single-pointed question in Congress quickly ignited a nationwide storm when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett confronted Elon Musk live on air. No one anticipated the explosive fallout that followed. It all started with a crisp, direct inquiry during a House subcommittee hearing on federal technology contracts. Could someone explain why SpaceX has been awarded over $2.8 billion in no-bid contracts just this fiscal year? Jasmine asked with composed intensity. The camera briefly shifted to the witness table, executives from 3 leading tech firms, none offering a clear response. 1. A former SpaceX legal advisor now serving as a federal consultant appeared visibly unsettled. After the session, Jasmine returned to her office in the Rayburn building, surrounded by aides. She didn't think much of the question. She asked such things weekly. But this time felt different. As she pulled off her heels, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Careful who you try to humiliate in public, especially if you plan on keeping your job. At first, she thought it was just another troll. Her inbox was always full of garbage. Being a black woman in Congress came with that territory. But this message was precise. Then another text from the same unknown number. You're playing a game where you don't understand the rules. There are ways to silence noise. Jasmine stared at the screen, frozen. She handed the phone to her chief of staff, Lillian Baxter, who read the messages and immediately locked the office door. He's watching, Lillian said quietly. That's Elon. No, could be anyone. Jasmine replied, but it didn't even sound convincing to herself. Still, she hoped. Within hours, her office received an encrypted email. No greeting, no signature, just one sentence. We suggest you redirect your curiosity towards smaller, less expensive targets. Attached was a redacted financial file showing a loan her father had taken out 15 years earlier, one she'd never seen. That night, she didn't sleep. Sitting on the edge of her bed in her DC condo, listening to the city outside, it wasn't fear she felt. It was calculation. Jasmine had faced pressure before, sparred with lobbyists and colleagues, but this felt private. She called her brother Renard, a civil rights attorney in Minneapolis. Run, you busy? Always. What's up? What would you do if someone sent you your dad's financial history out of nowhere? There was a pause. Real or hypothetical? Real. Possibly Musk. Girl, you've been poking bears. Jasmine exhaled slowly. Yeah, but this ain't just a poke. He wants me quiet. Renard didn't laugh or call her paranoid. Instead, he said something she never forgot. If someone with real power feels threatened by your voice, it means your voice is working. But if you stay quiet now, it won't be your last silence. She hung up and stared at a framed poster of Barbara Jordan behind a podium in 1974, eyes locked on the future. Jasmine grabbed a notepad and started scribbling names. Lobbyists, subcontractors, Senate aides, tech watchdogs. If she was going to speak, she needed more than emotion. Facts, paper trails, something undeniable. The next morning, another message came through. Last warning. That's when she decided she wasn't just going to speak. She was going to show the country exactly what silence looked like when given a microphone. But the real explosion didn't happen until she walked into the hearing room with a USB stick and a plan she hadn't shared with anyone, not even her staff. Jasmine Crockett wasn't reckless. She didn't make moves without calculation, especially on Capitol Hill, where every sentence gets clipped, spun, and weaponized. But that morning, 3 days after the last message, she was done waiting. Lillian knocked once, entered, and closed the door. You've barely said a word since Friday. I don't know what you're replanning, but are we in danger? Jasmine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled out a small thumb drive. Everything's on here, she said quietly. The messages, the email, the loan document, even the metadata. I had someone scrub it. It's real. It all points back to one person. Lillian stepped back, voice low and urgent. You're talking about Elon Musk, Jazz. You realize what happens if you're wrong. I'm not, Jasmine said. And even if I was, let them try to prove it. Lillian begged her to hold off a few more days. Let me loop in people we trust, someone from the Senate or Rokana. Don't go in alone. That man has rockets, satellites, data centers. He's not playing checkers. But Jasmine already knew something deeper. If I wait, this dies in committee, buried behind investigations and future hearings. In 6 months, the story turns into whether I violated some ethics code. I know this game. She stared out at Independence Avenue, where reporters loitered with cameras. They think they can scare me into silence with veiled threats and ancient debts. But my father's loan didn't define him, and it doesn't define me. Renard called again. Musk has shell companies bidding through proxies. Some got classified AI contracts approved last year without oversight. I've got receipts if you need them. Send everything. And Jazz, be ready. He won't just come at you on the record. He'll come sideways. Background leaks, stories about your past, old clients, maybe even your family. She exhaled. I'm already getting them. There's a guy from the Daily Ledger calling people I went to college with. You sure you still want to go forward? Yeah. I'm done flinching. By Monday, Jasmine had made her choice. The hearing was on AI accountability and defense appropriations. Elon Musk wasn't scheduled to be there officially, but she knew his fingerprints would be all over the testimony, background papers, and tech lobbyists in the back rows. She arrived early, hair pulled back, navy suit, face calm but alert. She carried nothing except a binder and that USB stick tucked inside her folder. Her staff didn't even know she had it. Inside the committee room, the air was tense, lobbyists whispering, journalists watching, every seat filled. Representative Karen Laskin from Oregon was already speaking when Jasmine took her seat. Laskin's voice was steady, her words vague, talking about the risks of unregulated AI development. It was the kind of speech that sounded important but said nothing. Jasmine wasn't there to sound important. When it was her turn, she didn't open with pleasantries. No smile, no warm-up. I want to read something to the committee, she began, voice even. It's a message I received after our last session. Direct, short, and very intentional. She paused, then read. Careful who you try to humiliate in public, especially if you plan on keeping your job. People shifted in their seats. I received 2 others, along with financial information about my father, who has no public role in government. Chairman Price tried to interrupt, but Jasmine raised her hand. I have the full trail, metadata, origin IPs, timestamps. I've secured backup verification. But today isn't about proving it to you. It's about letting the public know that intimidation doesn't belong in these walls. She stopped, calm and composed, but the silence that followed felt sharp. I'll be submitting a USB drive into the record. It includes everything. Then she sat back. She hadn't said his name. Not yet, but she didn't need to. Jasmine knew the real storm would come after lunch, when she'd finally say the name out loud, and the footage would reach every screen in the country. There was no break, no exhale, no hallway moment to breathe. As soon as Jasmine submitted the USB drive, everything changed. The chairman tried to shift focus, calling on Representative Bain from Utah to redirect discussion, but it was too late. Reporters caught the scent. Cameras zoomed in. A C-SPAN producer leaned into her earpiece. Something was happening, and everyone knew it. Jasmine sat still, flipping through notes, but she wasn't reading. Her hands were warm, not shaking, pulsing with the energy of being in the eye of a storm. You lit yourself. Lillian, sitting behind her, didn't say a word. She just slid a legal pad across the table. Scribbled on it. Musk's reps are here. Back row, black tie, third from the left. Jasmine glanced up. She recognized him, Dorian Vest, one of Musk's private legal consultants. She'd seen him 2 years ago defending a patent issue with Neuralink. Cold eyes, never blinking. He wasn't there to observe. He was there to gather. Chairman Price called for a recess. 10 minutes, he said, avoiding eye contact with Jasmine. As he tapped his gavel, the room shifted instantly, staffers talking into phones, aides whispering behind binders. Jasmine stayed seated. Representative Elena Morales slid beside her, voice low. You sure you want to go all the way with this? That was bold, but if you're wrong, I'm not. Just remember what happened to Ingrid Hale. That name hit different. Hale had been a senator who went after tech funding in 2018. She resigned after a scandal involving a nonprofit she never managed. The story disappeared a week later, but the damage stuck. I remember, Jasmine said. Back in her office during recess, she checked her phone. The first headline had already hit. Breaking. Reptile, Jasmine Crockett alleges threats over SpaceX contracts. She scrolled thousands of comments, some supportive, others accusing her of a stunt. Then she saw it. Musk's tweet, just one line. You'd think a congresswoman would have better things to do than pretend she's being bullied. The bait was set. She looked at Lillian. He's playing the crazy black woman card. Yeah, and he's hoping people eat it up. Jasmine wasn't surprised. This was strategy, not spontaneity. Elon knew exactly what tone to strike. Dismissive, sarcastic, condescending. The goal wasn't just to discredit, it was to make people laugh at her. Back in the hearing room, things sharpened. Chairman Price opened his mouth, but Jasmine interrupted. I'd like to make one more point, Mr. Chairman. He hesitated, then nodded. Proceed. Jasmine turned to the witnesses. Before we continue, have any of your companies, SpaceX, Neuralink, Tesla, been awarded AI development contracts through shell corporations or unlisted intermediaries? That did it. The murmur started instantly. One witness glanced toward the back row, another fumbled with his mic. I'll repeat. Have any of you used fronts to obtain defense or infrastructure contracts not openly disclosed to this committee? The Tesla rep cleared his throat. Congresswoman, I don't think it's appropriate to. It's a yes or no question, she continued, because I have documentation showing AI testing conducted in partnership with the Department of Defense at a site in El Paso using a subcontractor with a shell registration linked to a known Musk affiliate. Now there was panic. Eyes darted, phones out. Then Jasmine said it. I believe Elon Musk has directly threatened a sitting member of Congress to avoid questions about these contracts. If we let that slide, we're setting a precedent no democracy survives. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. People heard her, all of them. But the moment that would flip the country upside down hadn't happened yet. That would come in the next 5 minutes, when she showed the first message on a screen the whole nation could see. 5 minutes later, everything Jasmine had held close was on the table, literally. She stood, walked to the committee's projection screen, and slid the USB stick into the port herself. Congresswoman Crockett, Chairman Price said, tone clipped. I must remind you all, digital evidence must go through the committee clerk prior to. She cut him off. I understand, Mr. Chairman, but given this evidence includes communications sent directly to me threatening my position and safety, and given some members have shown reluctance to address how tech money influences government oversight, I'm choosing to exercise my time to show the American people what intimidation looks like. Click. The first message appeared, projected silently onto the giant screen behind the witness table. Careful who you try to humiliate in public, especially if you plan on keeping your job. No one said a word. Then the second, you're playing a game where you don't understand the rules. There are ways to silence noise. And finally, we suggest you redirect your curiosity towards smaller, less expensive targets. The font was unremarkable. The words weren't dramatic, but they landed like punches. People in the gallery shifted. One reporter raised his phone and started live streaming. The Tesla executive kept his eyes locked on the wood grain of the witness table. Chairman Price looked ready to object again, but Jasmine had one more move. I've brought verification of the source. A third-party firm traced the origin server. The IP points to a routing center owned by a Musk-affiliated tech incubator in Fort Worth, Texas. There's no denying the connection anymore. Then she turned to the camera, not the committee. There's a line we don't talk about in politics, the one between lobbying and coercion, influence and threats. Today, I'm not here to speculate. I'm here because that line was crossed, and I believe the American people deserve to know who's willing to use power not to build, but to silence. Whispers turned to open conversation. A few aides started leaving. One Musk staffer quietly took off his badge and slipped out the side exit. The committee room was falling apart, but Jasmine didn't blink. Representative Morales leaned toward Chairman Price. We need a recess now. Price nodded, called for a 30-minute break. Jasmine stepped down and walked back to her seat. Lillian handed her a bottle of water, but said nothing. She didn't have to. Outside, news anchors were already rolling. Crockett goes public with Musk messages. Tech billionaire accused of threatening Congresswoman. Elon Musk, political power or dangerous influence. Inside, things shifted faster than the press could keep up. Representative Jared Knows, silent on tech oversight for years, walked across the room and sat next to Jasmine. Look, he said quietly, I'm not saying I believe or don't believe everything, but if you're right, this could change everything. You need to watch your back. I already am, she said. Then, almost like he didn't mean to, he added, there's more you haven't seen. He's got friends and agencies, not just influence contracts. People owe him. Jasmine looked at him. Then they're part of this too. Knows hesitated. If you're going to fight this, you're going to need allies. She raised an eyebrow. You offering? He looked down. I didn't say that. Outside the hearing room, Capitol Police were preparing for media chaos. An officer tapped Lillian on the shoulder. We're going to need to escort you out a separate way, just in case. Jasmine wasn't scared, but she was awake now, awake in a way she hadn't been in years. She'd hit something real. But even Jasmine didn't expect what came next, when the online backlash turned from Musk's denial to a full-on smear campaign targeting her finances and family. By nightfall, the internet was burning. Clips of Jasmine reading the threats went viral. Every major outlet played it on loop. CNN analysts debated her strategy. Fox News called it a manufactured distraction. Twitter, now called X, was split. Some called her a hero. Others accused her of a publicity stunt. But the smear campaign started almost instantly. A thread appeared under a verified account known for breaking tech gossip, claiming Jasmine had ties to a former campaign donor who once did business with a Chinese telecom firm. Screenshots were vague, language careful, but the point was clear: discredit her by any means. Another account posted a decade-old clip of Jasmine at a law school protest, yelling through a bullhorn. Caption: Is this who we trust with national security? Then came the bots, hundreds of accounts, freshly created, all posting the same line. Crockett's playing the victim again. Jasmine watched from her apartment, shoes off, hair down, phone in her lap, like a loaded weapon. She wasn't surprised, but it still hit hard. Renard called again. They're digging for anything they can twist. They want to make you emotional, get you to overreact. I'm not biting. Good, because what you did today, that was real. And real scares them. She smiled just a little. I needed to hear that. Outside her window, D.C. buzzed with camera crews and vans. Reporters camped out in front of her building, shouting questions. Lillian had gone home to change, but promised to return by sunrise. Then Jasmine's phone buzzed again. A text from her cousin in Baton Rouge. Hey, you okay? Some guy came by Mama's shop asking questions about you. Said he was with a magazine, but didn't have a card. Just thought you should know. Jasmine's stomach turned. It had begun. She opened her laptop and pulled up her father's loan file. The one Musk's people had used as leverage. A $45,000 line of credit taken out in 2007 to keep their family store from closing. Her dad paid it off in full before he passed, but someone wanted to drag it out now, frame it like a scandal. That's how they worked. Quiet dirt, public shaming. She took a breath and logged into a secure drive. Inside were dozens of files, financial links between Musk's entities and shell corporations with government contracts. She'd spent 2 weeks cross-referencing them late at night, eating cold noodles while squinting at spreadsheets. This wasn't just about her anymore. It never was. It was about how much one man could do without being elected, how money could close mouths and open doors, and how easily that power could tip into fear. The next morning, she appeared on Face the Nation. No makeup artist, no prepared talking points, just her and a mic. Host Kevin Sloan leaned in. Congresswoman Crockett, are you accusing Elon Musk of trying to silence you? She stared straight into the camera. I'm not accusing. I'm saying it happened. He paused. Are you afraid? No. I'm tired. Tired of seeing people with enough money to bypass accountability. Tired of the idea that questioning someone rich makes you a target. And tired of being told to stay quiet because the truth might be inconvenient. Sloan blinked. The room felt still. She added, we don't work for billionaires. We work for the people who can't buy silence. The clip trended for hours. Support poured in. Teachers, veterans, nurses, people who'd never heard her name until that week. Some sent flowers to her office. Others left voicemails crying. One woman wrote, I've been scared to speak at my own job. You made me feel brave again. But for every message of support, there were 5 more trying to break her down. But Jasmine's strength wasn't the story yet. What came next made it impossible for even her harshest critics to look away. Musk's retaliation, sudden and ruthless. The response didn't come with sirens, no public statement, no press conference, just a tweet, short, blunt, fabricated drama. Sad. It dropped at 6:04 a.m. West Coast time and instantly hijacked the news cycle. Most analysts expected Musk to stay quiet or send lawyers after Jasmine, but that tweet was the starting gun. What followed wasn't a rebuttal, it was a campaign. Hours later, a well-known digital magazine published a sudden exposé titled, "Who is Jasmine Crockett, Really?" The story dredged up old landlord disputes from her early 30s, hinted at exaggerated net worth claims from her first congressional run, and quoted anonymous sources calling her temperamental and attention-hungry. One quote from a supposed former staffer read, "She always thought she was the smartest in the room. Maybe she should have picked a quieter room." Jasmine read it twice. Then came the second wave, a podcast hosted by a crypto investor Musk often retweeted. The host laughed for 20 seconds before saying, "Imagine thinking you can pick a fight with the guy who literally controls your internet connection." He wasn't wrong. SpaceX's Starlink had contracts with over 20 U.S. states and was in talks for AI infrastructure on military bases. Musk wasn't just rich, he was plugged in at levels that made him immune to traditional consequence. Bernard called again, more urgent. "There's chatter online. Musk's people are hinting at an ethics investigation into you. You need to prepare." Jasmine stayed calm. On what grounds? "They're building something around misuse of committee resources." Total nonsense. But if it sticks, she knew the strategy wasn't to prove her wrong. It was to drown her out, shift the conversation, dismantle her credibility brick by brick. Later that day, her alma mater received a formal inquiry from a private watchdog group clearly connected to Musk's orbit. The topic, whether she had misrepresented academic achievements in prior media interviews. It was laughable but dangerous. That night, Jasmine sat on her living room floor, papers spread around her like a war room. Lillian walked in with Thai takeout and 2 beers. "You eating?" Jasmine shook her head. "I can't figure out where the next hit's coming from. I feel like I'm walking around a room full of lasers, and I can't even see the beams." Lillian sat beside her. "You already said the truth. They're just trying to make it loud enough that no one hears it." Jasmine stared down at a spreadsheet. "You think they'll come after my family? They already have." That stopped her. Lillian handed her a printout, screenshots from a now-deleted Reddit thread, pictures of Jasmine's cousin's auto shop, comments linking her uncle's small business to suspicious campaign donations. It was spiraling, and she was in the middle of it. The next morning, during her daily security briefing, Capitol Police suggested she avoid public appearances for the week. A man had been arrested outside her office the night before, armed, saying he was there to ask questions about lying women in Congress. She nodded slowly. "Did he say your name?" "No, but he had your picture in his car." She thanked them, returned to her desk, and sat in silence. Her phone buzzed again, not a message but a link. An internal memo leaked to the press showed Musk-affiliated contractors had been awarded nearly $400 million in DoD funding through backdoor amendments. The leak came from a burner account, no name attached, but the documents matched her findings exactly. Jasmine leaned back in her chair. Someone on the inside had just blinked, but she didn't know yet who had sent that leak or how dangerous it was for both of them. That answer would come soon, and it would change the fight completely. By the end of the week, the Capitol felt like it had shifted on its axis. For months, there had been quiet grumbling about tech giants and their reach into government policy. But what Jasmine had done turned those whispers into full-throated arguments. The leak changed everything. It wasn't just screenshots anymore. It was evidence, dollar amounts, contract codes, company names linked directly to Elon Musk's web of influence. And still, few were willing to say his name. Behind closed doors, staffers whispered about retaliation. One aide from the Armed Services Committee told Lillian, "We've had calls from donors we haven't heard from in years asking where we stand. It's getting weird." Jasmine wasn't shocked. Power doesn't panic unless it's threatened. Then came the first internal memo from House leadership urging members to remain neutral until further review. That was code for, "Don't touch this unless you have to." But silence was a position too. She began losing support in small, quiet ways. Colleagues who used to greet her in the hallway now walked the other way. Invitations to panels and press briefings were postponed indefinitely. Her committee staff got smaller by the day. No one was fired. People just started taking leave, reassigning themselves, citing burnout. Even the morning coffee cart outside her office was gone. "You notice? They're treating you like the virus instead of the warning," Lillian said one afternoon, handing Jasmine a folder. "I noticed," Jasmine replied. "But they're not scared of me. They're scared of what this means." Still, one person hadn't distanced himself, Representative Giles Dalton, a centrist from Arizona who kept his head down most days. That morning, he showed up at her door unannounced. "Can we talk?" She nodded. They sat in her office, blinds down. "I've got a friend in the Inspector General's office," he said. "He told me there's a freeze on all AI-related contract audits. Not a delay, a freeze. Someone pulled strings?" Jasmine leaned forward. "Musk, possibly. But it goes higher. This stuff gets routed through joint special projects. That's above your average bureaucrat. Are you saying this is national security?" "I'm saying it's convenient how every attempt to audit his contracts suddenly goes dark. And now you've brought daylight." She tilted her head. "Why tell me this?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I watched that hearing 3 times, and I couldn't stop thinking. If it were me, would I have the spine to do what you did?" Jasmine didn't answer. He stood, hand on the door. "Just be careful. This ain't just tech money anymore. This is institutional." That word stuck. Institutional, not corporate, not personal. The threat wasn't a man. It was the machine that let that man grow unchecked. The next day, during a private subcommittee meeting, Jasmine presented more evidence, redacted, sourced, verified. A few members nodded. One even whispered, "Thank you," but no one said it on the record. That night, her phone rang with a blocked number. She picked up. A voice, shaky, low male. "I'm the one who sent you the leak. I can't talk long." She froze. "Who are you?" "I used to work on the integration team for one of the defense contracts. What you said in that hearing, that wasn't wrong. It's worse than you think." "Worse how?" "Some of the projects aren't even operational. They're fake. Musk just moved numbers around on paper and pulled funding from other divisions to make it look like something was built. You have proof. I have access, but they're monitoring my logins now. I'll try again next week." He hung up. No name, no trace, but the fear in his voice was real. Jasmine sat in the dark, phone still in her hand. The system was cracking, slowly, painfully, but it was happening. But what she didn't expect, what she couldn't have planned for, was how far the other side would go to break her next. Not through politics, but through the people she loved. It happened on a Thursday morning, just before sunrise. Jasmine was standing in her kitchen pouring coffee when her phone rang. Not her work line, her personal cell. The number wasn't familiar, but it had a Louisiana area code. She answered, expecting a constituent or distant relative. "Miss Crockett," the voice said. "Yes. This is Officer Delaney with the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. We have your cousin Donna in protective custody. Someone broke into her apartment last night. Nothing stolen, just a mess. And a photograph of you was left on the kitchen table." Jasmine didn't speak. Her body stiffened, the mug still in her hand. "Is she okay?" she asked finally. "She wasn't home, thank God, but she's shaken. We've moved her somewhere safe." After she hung up, she stood for a full minute, staring at the coffee dripping from the edge of the counter. When Lillian arrived an hour later, Jasmine barely looked up. "They're not just warning me anymore. They're putting hands on people." Lillian sat down slowly. "We need to tell someone. I've already contacted local authorities, but I know how this works. There will be no fingerprints, no camera footage, just shadows." Lillian was silent for a while. Then she asked the question neither of them wanted to say out loud. "Do we stop?" Jasmine looked her in the eye. "If we do, what was the point of all this?" Still, the weight was getting harder to carry. That afternoon, Renard flew in from Minneapolis. He didn't call ahead, just showed up at her door with a carry-on bag and a worn-out hoodie. "You look like hell," he said. "You flew in to insult me?" "I flew in because someone just tried to scare my cousin to death." They sat in silence for a moment before Jasmine whispered, "I didn't think it would go this far." Renard leaned back. "That's the thing about power. Once you threaten it, it'll show you exactly how ugly it can get." She nodded for the first time since this began. She cried. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet tears while staring at the wall. Not because she was scared, but because she hated what her courage was costing the people she loved. Bernard put a hand on her shoulder. "You still got fight in you." She didn't answer right away. Then she wiped her face, stood up, and grabbed her laptop. "Yes, but now it's not just about Musk. It's about the machine that lets him act like this." Later that night, she went live on Instagram. No makeup, no lighting, just her sitting on her couch. She didn't yell, didn't accuse. She just spoke. "I want to talk to the people who've been following this story because what's happening isn't a headline. It's real life. Someone tried to send a message by going after my family, and I want to be clear. I got the message, but I'm not backing down. Not now." Not ever. Within minutes, her live stream was picked up by blogs, then cable news. Her face filled television screens across the country, not as a politician, but as a person, a woman holding her ground under fire. Comments poured in. We're with you. Protect her. Don't let this story die. And just as suddenly, the tone of the national conversation began to shift. Journalists who'd stayed neutral started asking harder questions. Former Musk employees began contacting independent reporters. On Sunday night, a second whistleblower came forward on a local California news station, confirming that SpaceX had used falsified performance data to secure military AI funding. Jasmine watched the clip in silence. Bernard was on the other end of the couch, arms crossed. They're cracking. Yeah, she whispered, but they're not finished. But in the chaos of leaks and confessions, something bigger was forming, something that could turn the tide for good: accountability. And Jasmine knew she had one last card to play. 3 days after the second whistleblower came forward, everything changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was unmistakable. An internal memo leaked from the Department of Defense, signed by a deputy undersecretary, confirmed that several AI contracts awarded to companies connected to Elon Musk were under ethics-based suspension. In plain English, it meant someone up top finally blinked for the first time since this mess started. Jasmine wasn't the one holding the mic. Other people were finally speaking. Former staffers, mid-level engineers, even a former Air Force liaison stepped forward, confirming what Jasmine had been saying for weeks. Performance data had been altered to secure AI defense funding, with government watchdogs quietly pressured to look the other way. CNN ran a special report called Silicon Shield, inside the Musk government loop. They used red yarn graphics and shadowy interview footage. It wasn't perfect, but it helped. The public narrative shifted. One op-ed in the Los Angeles Sentinel put it plainly. We don't know if Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took on Goliath, but Goliath sure seems nervous. In the halls of Congress, people who had once avoided her were suddenly interested in meetings. Representative Giles Dalton returned, this time with a formal proposal, a bipartisan hearing on ethical contracting in tech and AI, which Jasmine would co-lead. At first, she hesitated. Why now? She asked bluntly. Dalton shrugged. Because you're right, and because people are finally watching. The announcement went out that afternoon. A new hearing was scheduled, and Jasmine would have the floor. The topic: government contract integrity and tech influence in defense procurement. The pressure was enormous, not just because the nation was watching, but because Musk wasn't done. His allies had been quiet lately, but Jasmine didn't think for 1 second that meant surrender. It meant recalibration. And sure enough, that same night, another anonymous story dropped, this time accusing Jasmine of accepting foreign consulting perks during a trade mission 4 years earlier. The article was vague, based on unnamed sources, and immediately debunked by the State Department. Still, it was a reminder the fight wasn't over. But something was different now. Jasmine wasn't standing alone. A group of veteran lawmakers, some of whom she'd once thought of as silent cowards, released a joint statement backing her call for reform. Advocacy groups followed, then watchdog organizations, then the Department of Justice announced a preliminary review into the contracting process tied to Neuralink's recent AI defense grant. The dam had broken. Bernard was back in Minneapolis by then, but they talked every night. One evening, she told him, "It's not about Musk anymore. It's about the ecosystem that made him think threatening me was just a move on a chessboard. And now he knows I'm not a pawn." A week before the hearing, a retired general requested a private meeting. His name was Wilfred Stone. Jasmine recognized him. He'd served on the Defense Innovation Board. She agreed. They met in a quiet room off the Capitol Rotunda. No cameras, no aides. Stone was gruff, deliberate. "I've watched you from a distance," he said. "Wanted to see how far they'd push you before you snapped. I'm still here." He nodded. "Good, because what you're touching is deeper than most folks realize. The tech companies don't just sell us tools. They build the very systems we rely on to fight, defend, communicate. And when one man has his name on too many of those systems, the country becomes vulnerable." Jasmine let the words sit. Stone leaned in slightly. "You've stirred a hornet's nest, but sometimes that's the only way to find out who's been hiding behind the silence." He stood, saluted lightly, and left. That night, Jasmine looked over her final notes. Her team was prepping exhibits, verifying numbers, organizing testimony. Lillian handed her a packet. Everything's lined up. You ready? Jasmine nodded. I've been ready since the day they told me to be quiet. But the real weight wasn't in the paperwork. It was in her voice. Because at that hearing, she'd speak not just as a lawmaker, but as a woman who faced the storm and never left the room. The hearing room felt colder than usual. Maybe it was the temperature. Maybe it was the weight of what was about to happen. It wasn't the typical shuffle of business as usual. No hollow greetings, no polite smirks. Reporters filled every inch of the press gallery. The American public was watching, waiting. And Jasmine knew this wasn't just about contracts anymore. This was about whether the truth could still stand up. In a room full of power, she walked in without ceremony, holding a worn black folder in one hand, her other resting briefly on the shoulder of Lillian, who'd been her backbone from day one. At the center of the committee table sat the placarded Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, co-chair. She took her seat. The chairman called the session to order. Cameras clicked, microphones hissed, a live stream ticker ran across the bottom of the screen. Jasmine waited for the opening remarks to finish, then leaned forward, turned on her mic, and looked directly into the camera. I won't waste your time with pleasantries, she began. We're here today to ask a simple question. Who's really making decisions about how our country operates? Is it elected officials accountable to the people, or billionaires with the power to intimidate, manipulate, and purchase silence? She held up a folder and opened it. In these pages are contract amendments signed off without review, shell companies created 2 weeks before receiving government funding, and internal emails showing how Musk-affiliated teams manipulated AI capability reports to secure military money. Gasps, murmurs. She didn't flinch. I bring this forward not because I hate success or ambition or innovation. I bring it forward because no one, no matter how wealthy, admired, or powerful, should be above the rules we ask others to follow. She paused. I was told to stay quiet, that speaking up could cost me everything. I lost friends. I put my family at risk. But I'm still here. Lillian was off to the side, eyes locked on her. Bernard, watching from home, texted one word. Fire. Jasmine continued. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for integrity. For every whistleblower who came forward risking their job. For every taxpayer funding ghost projects. For every person who's ever been told to shrink so someone else could stand taller. She took a deep breath. I submit this evidence for the official record. The folder landed with a soft thump. There was a long silence, then applause. Not from the committee, but from the gallery. Real people, some staffers, some guests, a few journalists. Nothing wild, just a slow, steady clap that built into something honest. The chairman banged his gavel. Order. But he couldn't stop the momentum. 2 other lawmakers, one Democrat, one Republican, issued statements supporting an independent investigation. The Department of Defense released a bulletin acknowledging potential procurement irregularities tied to SpaceX and Neuralink. And then came the moment no one expected. Elon Musk posted a message to X, uncharacteristically long. I don't agree with how this was handled, but if mistakes were made, they should be examined. I'll cooperate. It wasn't an admission, but it wasn't a threat. Later that evening, Jasmine stepped outside the Capitol. No cameras, just the wind and the sound of traffic humming in the distance. Lillian walked beside her. You think this is done? Jasmine shook her head. No, but it started. And that's more than I could say a month ago. Lillian smiled. You're not just part of the story. You are the story. Jasmine didn't respond. She just looked up at the dome above them, lit in gold, then down the steps toward the city that never slept, but always watched. And maybe now finally started to listen. Because in the end, this wasn't just about tech or politics. It was about reminding people that the truth still matters, and that silence can only hold if we all agree to keep our mouths shut.